Welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you're all doing well and you've had a good week in franchising. You may notice that's my lovely friend, Simon Wise, the ever wise Simon Wise. And that is because the lovely Guillermo, who was going to be on today, I think has got delayed or there might be a confusion on time. So forgive the last minute change, but we, instead of talking about franchising in Latin America, which we were going to talk about, we're now going to talk about franchise recruitment. It would be great to hear your thoughts on that subject when you do join us. I might even put it up on the ticker that it's changed. Yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So where do we begin? We always begin by letting you know what the premise behind the show is. And the premise of the franchise show is to delve deep into franchising and to perhaps think of some questions that you might ask and help people make a more informed decision by bringing a community of experts and enthusiasts together to have a conversation each week. And it's always about the community, and the questions are always driven by our colleagues and friends. So if you are watching this, please give us your thoughts about franchise recruitment. And when I say recruitment, I'm talking about a couple of different things, really. I'm talking about recruiting new franchisees and how we do that, and also recruiting great team members and how we get to know and nurture and get the best from our colleagues and our peers. So it's going to be a fascinating conversation. Really looking forward to this one. So without further ado, I'd like to reintroduce to the ever wise Simon Wise. He's not going to be in the comments today, so
I'm stirring up any trouble in the comments.
No.
Hola, Harvey, ¿cómo está?
It's fantastic to have you back as a returning guest. It was some time ago, right at the beginning of the show, that you were on. So I'm sure a lot has changed in the world of recruitment, and it's going to be another fascinating conversation. So perhaps, Simon, you could reintroduce yourself and talk a little bit about your thoughts on recruitment and the challenges we face.
Thank you, Harvey. I'm delighted to be here and live and talking about recruitment. I think we should talk about both things, really. I mean, from the recruitment of franchisees, but also staff as well. My main business is FranRec, and what I do is I offer a executive search and headhunting and staff recruitment service for franchisors. And what we do at FranRec is really open up and widen the franchise talent pool. So we bring in people that are experienced in franchising, that understand the nature of the relationship and support the growth of and development of the network through recruiting and placing qualified, experienced franchising people, basically. But yeah, I mean, more recently, as I said, we've started to look into the whole area of franchise talent on a broader level as well, about supporting franchisors in their quest to recruit good quality franchisees, and that's the work we've been doing on franchising brand stories. But yeah, recruitment is pretty much is what I do. I've been in the industry for 27 years now. Started my life at the British Franchise Association, and then was a franchisee myself. So I've got quite an interesting perspective on both counts, really.
Fantastic. No, thanks for that introduction, and it's great to have you on, and thank you as well for stepping in at the last moment and providing what is.
I rarely get a chance to go out these days, so it's very nice to be here. Thank you.
It's going to be a great conversation, and it's always a pleasure to have a chat with you. Before we start getting into the subject, let's just have a look at a few people that have joined us today. So we have the lovely Julie here. Great to see you, Julie. And she's put evening from the Northeast and happy to see you both. Well, it's great to have you with us, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts on franchise recruitment and looking after and nurturing your people. We've got Nick Plevin here. Great to have you here as well, Nick. Nick is hopefully a proud sponsor, but Nick is a sponsor of the show with his wonderful service eRecruit. So it's going to be an e-talent. It's going to be a really interesting one for you to get involved in, Nick, to see how that software fits in to that recruitment process, how it can improve it and how it can be combined with more traditional methods for finding and nurturing talent, how the two sort of slot together. So going to be fascinated to hear your thoughts today, Nick. Julie has put here, following on from Pip on franchising brand stories last week, saying it was the biggest challenge in the sector at the moment. Absolutely. So yeah, I think we'll come back to that about it being a challenge, and perhaps have a word with Simon about that in a sec. Julie's also put any feedback from franchisors on the session who exhibited at London exhibitions earlier this year and then NEC last year would be really useful. Yeah, great. If there's anyone here that exhibited there, what was your thoughts? How did you find that as a recruiting process, and did that help? And finally, want to say hello to Jitin. It's great to have you here, Jitin. Jitin was a guest on the show. Really great story. Lovely to have you here, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts on franchise recruitment. So, Simon, let's go back to this comment that Julie's put here. Do you think that this still remains the biggest challenge that we face, recruitment in its various forms?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's been like that since I've ever been in. 27 years. It's consistent. It's recruitment is the biggest challenge, and I think, it's unique. It's not unique to the UK, but our franchising culture is different to other markets. We're very discerning. Good franchisors are very discerning about the type of people that they want in their network. So if you care about that and you want to make sure you get it right, then it's always going to be a challenge for sure. And okay, there are a few franchisors in the UK at the moment that are hitting double-digit sort of recruitment numbers, but I like to think that, notwithstanding the fact that we're not up there with the USA and Australia in terms of their recruitment numbers, we're focused more on quality and bringing the right people in. So I think the fact that it is a problem and it still is a challenge says a lot about the UK franchising industry, that we are very, very cautious and careful about who we get into the network. And that has implications, obviously, for the approach. So yeah, I agree. And Pip said that on Brand Stories last week, that the survey, top of the list again, was the challenges that franchisors face. I think there is a lot more that franchisors can do in terms of their recruitment techniques and the way in which they do seek to attract and identify suitable prospects. And that's using innovation, using technology, and a bit more lateral thinking. I think if you're a franchisor, you've really got to fully, understand your franchising brand story, your value proposition, have a look at your network, identify your franchisee avatar to see where people in the network, common traits and themes about their personalities and where they come from. And that will guide you a little bit more specifically in terms of recruitment. And it's what we do, as staff executive recruiters. We don't just stick adverts out there and come one, come all and pride ourselves on a great big pile of CVs. It's a very scientific approach, and you ask a lot of questions, and you want to really get into an individual's drive and motivation, attributes and culture and values, and map those to to the role or that you're recruiting for. So it has become a lot more of a scientific approach. But we're so lucky now, aren't we? That we can use technology, we can use AI. I mean, AI is something that we're looking at the moment in terms of extending the reach of franchising brand stories, and it opens up all sorts of possibilities. So it is a challenge, but if franchisors are prepared to invest in a new way of thinking about how they can attract the best talent, then I think it's not an insurmountable challenge, and something that we can get through as an industry for sure.
No, that's great. We've also got Jason here. Hi, Jason. Just to let you know, it's not Guillermo, it's the ever wise Simon Wise. We had a lovely last minute change, and we're talking about recruitment today, Jason. So, give us your thoughts on recruitment and how search engine optimization can play its part in recruiting new franchisees and getting that name out there. But it's great to have you with us. Another one of our wonderful sponsors of the show, SEO Samba, and it's great to have you with us today. If you have just joined us, this is the Franchise Show, and today we are talking franchise recruitment with the wonderful and ever wise Simon Wise. So it's great to have Simon with us today, and it's going to be a fascinating conversation to have. So please, if you're here and you're listening live, put your comments up, and we can chat through and hopefully get some sort of thought-provoking stuff on the table. So let's have a look. We've got a comment here from Nick. Nick's put, it's good to hear that there isn't just the same focus on hard skills in franchise recruitment as there still is in general or frontline recruitment. Yeah, those soft skills, the things that you really need a conversation to find out what those soft skills are. I mean, how do you find talent and see where sort of values are aligned in terms of those softer skills?
As I said, we're very lucky in this day and age that we have, technology and social media. You can see what people are posting. You can see what people are commenting on. If there's a LinkedIn article, for example, somebody puts in a perspective or an understanding, that tells you a lot about the individual and their depth of understanding of franchising. So yeah, we can do a lot of research behind the CV, if you like, and get to find out a little bit more about people. But it's important, as I said, we offer a bespoke service. It's not a one size fits all. So we get to know the company as well, the company, the culture, the people behind the business, and that's a really good indicator of the type of individual will be a good fit within that organization, within that role. And equally, we get to know, and again, this is through experience, but again through our own research as well, is the sort of nature of the franchise network. What is the profile of the people that you're going to be supporting in the field, for example, if we're recruiting for a franchise support and development role, and does that individual, is he or she able to align with the aspirations and motivations of those individuals? So the softer skills are certainly coming a lot more to the fore. There are certain checks and balances, for particularly if we're recruiting for specific roles in franchising that people want to see. If it's a franchisee recruitment role, for example, they're going to want to make sure that people have the disciplines and the skills to be able to manage a sales funnel, who can, hit the ground running, who know what marketing platforms will work for their particular industry sector. But more and more modern day recruiting is about finding out about the individual's culture and values and matching those and mapping those to the requirement of the organization.
Absolutely.
In previous years, we've been doing this now for 13, 14 years, and that's changed significantly the profile and our approach to finding the best talent.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I think it's really important as well to get that right. When you're looking for talent, that's really what drives your business. Let's have another look. We've got a couple of questions that have come in here. One from, let's have a look at what Jason's put here. So Jason's put, what marketing channels are working best for emerging brands, less than 10 locations? You mentioned there when we're looking at recruiting new franchisees, if you're going to be a recruiter for new franchisees, you want an idea of what channels work well. In your experience dealing with lots of different brands, have you found that there's a type of marketing that works really well to help that recruiter?
Most franchisors want to be uppermost in people's minds when individuals are looking to invest in a franchise. So naturally, that will lead them towards some of the mass production, if you like, portals, franchising portals. It's very difficult, isn't it? It's difficult for an emerging franchise brand to get traction. But what I see in the market is maybe a reliance probably too much on some of these portals and some of the brands, particularly emerging brands, not doing their organic marketing. Getting a really good franchising landing page, for example, on their website that is all about the key things that our American friends tell us about why now, and getting those messages across. So there's a lot that particularly emerging brands can do through the organic process. And being very clear about the type of person and the franchisee avatar that they want to come in. There are plenty of good portals out there, lead generation portals, for example, but I think you've got to take a bit of a step back and have a look at, who you're looking for, who you're targeting for. There are certain franchisors that will target a specific profile, and to use some of the more generic franchising platforms just wouldn't give them a good return on investment, and have to think a bit more laterally and a bit more focused. Look, for an as an emerging brand, you want to put a stake in the ground and say to people that we are here, we're offering a franchise opportunity. So in terms of marketing channels, look, the exhibitions traditionally, I know, have been a very good way of launching a franchise and being visible, and being able to say to people, hey, we're a franchise and we've got an opportunity for the right person. But it's really much, very much down to the individual brand and the type of people that they're looking for, I think. But there are some pretty decent portals out there, and different ways of attracting the right talent into the franchise.
No, that's great. I think it's important to recognize, particularly with you and I talking about the stories. As most people here know, we've launched another show called Franchising Brand Stories, and the story behind a brand is really. Oh, we have Guillermo here as well. If you just give us a second, Guillermo, if you're there. But the story behind the brand is so important. It's so, especially if you're an emerging brand. It's vital to get that story out.
Yeah, 100%. And that was the, again, my years of frustration, really, I guess, in terms of investigating and looking at franchising. You make an inquiry and then you get this brochure that lands on your doorstep, and you just have to wade through it. And you think, well, hang on a minute, what about the people behind it? How did they start? What are their trials and tribulations? What have they overcome to get to where they are now? So the story is and every franchise has got its own unique story. And I think, for any emerging brand out there, what I would say is make sure that you're amplifying that franchising brand story, and making sure that you're using, your own websites and anything that you do, your social channels, to get that franchising story out there, because that's what's going to get the traction for people. You're a new emerging brand. You haven't got all of the trading history and the track record as a franchise network, but what you've got is a very inspiring franchising brand story that people can relate to.
Absolutely.
There are ways and means of doing it.
It's so important, isn't it, that story, because it goes beyond those numbers. And whilst the numbers are important when it comes to recruitment, especially when you're trying to filter down, let's say you've used a portal, and let's say you've got 100 potential leads there, you're trying to find out who's aligned with you.
Yeah.
And to tell and share stories
Yeah.
You put ask questions. It's so key, isn't it? To ask good questions, find out what someone's passion, what their purpose, their drive is beyond those numbers. Because even within the same business, it varies depending on who you are.
100%, and that extends to the people that you employ in your franchise as well. Can they relate to the individuals, their own stories, where they've come from? Can they understand and recognise what opportunities there are out there, which is really important. And I think if you're going to bring Guillermo in at this point in time, I think it's important again, the culture. We have a very distinct culture in the UK in terms of whenever we're buying something or investing or investigating something.
I think what we're going to do today, actually, if this is all right with you, Simon, I think what we're going to do is we'll bring Guillermo in, and we can start to talk about the differences in recruitment between different regions. We have 3 people on. We'll make this good fun. So, if you have just joined us today, this is the Franchise Show. And we were going to be talking about franchising in Latin America. We are talking about recruitment with the ever-wise Simon Wise. But first, we are going to have a third guest. So I am going to bring in the wonderful Guillermo. And here he is. Welcome.
Hola.
Hi. Hola. How are you?
Very good. How are you, my friend?
Then I'm very fine. Sorry about the delay. I confused the time.
Not a problem at all. Let me very quickly pause. So this is the Franchise Show, and we are now all talking about franchise recruitment. And we've got 2 wonderful perspectives today. We've got this perspective of Simon Wise from FranRec here in the UK. And we've also got the perspective of Guillermo Quintana, who's based in Peru. So it's going to be really interesting to see the differences in how you recruit in these different regions. So Guillermo, first of all, welcome to the Franchise Show. Great to have you with us. Perhaps you could give a little brief introduction to yourself and what you do.
Yes, we have been working in the franchising industry since 1997, almost 15 years. And we have helping a lot of Latin America entrepreneurs to migrate their businesses to the franchising business model. We have been helping also to promote the micro franchising, because most of our companies here in Latin America are micro and small businesses. So we help these people to grow their business in the market. And also we have a franchising portal named expansionfranquicia.com. And we have been working in this industry since 15 years ago.
Wow, great, fantastic. And I mean, how do you find? Is it an emerging industry there in Peru? You say you've been working there 15 years. How long has franchising been going in your region?
Yes, well, in Peru, we have the first franchisee company which operates as a franchisee model in 1981. It was Kentucky Fried Chicken at the 90s years. This when the Peruvian government opened the foreign investment and promote the global market in the local economy. And a lot of American companies landed in Peruvian market and Latin American market, as McDonald's, Starbucks, Burger King, Pizza Hut, among others. In this moment, happened that Peruvian business and local entrepreneurs learn about this successful business model and has started to apply the franchising model to expand their businesses in this first stage. And comes the first Peruvian franchising as Bembo's, Mediterranean Chicken, Pasti Pizza. So you already know that the Peruvian food is very famous around the world, and we have different kind of foods, food from the coast, from the highlands, from the jungle.
Interesting. Is there any, if I could ask, is there any legislation that operates in your country for franchising? Is there disclosure law?
It's a good question. There's no regulation and rules in Latin America beside Mexico and Brazil.
Okay, and it's interesting actually, and it's a great question there, Simon. And Guillermo, as somebody who's can experience both with and without regulation, what do you think fares better? You know, what's perhaps the more successful way of doing it, with a more regulated arrangement, or something perhaps where you can be a bit more creative?
I would say that for our market that are small, I think that there's no reason to put many regulations. I think that we need to grow, and then probably we need more regulation. No, I know that in United States and Mexico and Brazil, they have a lot of regulations, a lot of rules. But I would say that most of the countries in Latin America, they don't have a big franchising market. I would say that probably later we'll need a regulation.
Sure. No, fantastic. I mean, what if you're a brand in another part of the world and you're looking to expand into the Latin America region? What's the best sort of, what are the steps you should take in doing that? I mean, obviously seek some professional advice, but is there a sort of series of things that's worth considering when you're in the region? Do all brands work in Latin America, do you think?
I will say that the first tip will say that the cultural. We have different cultural reasons. We need to tropicalize the brands to different cultures. Only in Peru we have many different cultures. Imagine the whole Latin America. No? Also, I would say that there's a lot of high food consumption in restaurants, high coffee consumption on the streets. There's a business growth trend with a franchisee model. And also Latin American societies always look for new offers from foreign brands from different countries, different regions, from Europe, from the United States, from Canada. They are all also looking for these different brands.
No, fantastic. That's really interesting to hear. It's interesting to hear you speak of culture. Simon and I were discussing before you came on about cultures and values and how that works in the recruitment process, and and understanding somebody's values and how they fit into a culture of a business. It's one thing, different cultures for different regions, but there are different cultures within organizations, and it's really important, I think, to understand those cultures. We do that here definitely through asking good questions and really understanding what that is. Is there I mean, let's talk recruitment, Guillermo, for a while. This is a subject that is really important. And when I say recruitment, I'm talking about two things: recruiting new franchisees and recruiting your key team members. How is that sort of done in your region? Do you use brokers? Do you use portals? What's the way you attract new potential franchisees generally?
Most of the time we use brokers, we use portals, and we use chambers of commerce that help us to recruit and find the main people that are looking to invest in franchising. We need to look that these people have to have experience in these sectors. If we talk about the gastronomy, we need to help find people who has already business in this sector. So this is the way that we find franchising candidates.
So can I just, sorry, Javier, it's just really interesting now, because I mean, that is the key, isn't it, to anybody that's looking to go into a market, enter into a new region, is to get a flavour for the recruitment. How easy is it to recruit franchisees? What's coming across from what you're saying, Guillermo, is the QSR and the F&B sector is very, very strong in Latin America, and that's where the potential lies. Is that what you're saying in terms of any new franchisors coming into the region?
Yes, also we try to look people that have financial support, because in the first years of the franchisee, they need to support with their own budget. So we need to people who has financial
Yep.
support to support
Okay,
their
so they're the
business.
existing business owners then. Is that what we see? You see a lot of in Latin America. So conversion franchising, people that are operating independently, albeit in a food sector.
Yeah, most of the people who we try to find there, they have
Yeah.
this
Okay,
profile.
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Simon, have you, in your experience of recruiting individuals and working with companies that have an international presence, what sort of person, what sort of character, or what sort of mindset does someone have to be able to work on an international level? Is it having the right contacts? Is it more?
Yeah, we have done some we did some recruitment actually for we did some recruitment in Central Europe, and we did some recruitment in Latin America as well, for some global brands that are based in the UK. It might sound obvious, but language skills are really important. Understanding and being able to embrace different cultures as well, and being very open-minded about different customs and values in different countries. But the beauty of franchising, the skills are very transferable, aren't they, in terms of the disciplines that you need if you're an employee or a key member, be it in a marketing or a franchise development or operational support role. Those skills are fairly universal. But yeah, for us, the biggest challenge was the language skills, and having people that understood the life cycle of franchising in that particular marketplace. That was very significant. And it wasn't an easy search, but we did find somebody for sure.
No, absolutely, I'm sure. But it's interesting with language. Obviously there's one language, which is the language you speak, but there's all sorts of other nuances to language, and and how that comes across, and the culture and the people that you're dealing with. Guillermo, how does that? What's the sort of mindset? What's the sort of persona of a typical franchisee that you've seen? But what does a franchisee look like in your region?
Well, I will also like to mention that there is some disadvantages of starting with franchising in Latin America. Is lack of legal framework and political turbulence. There's a lot of countries in Latin America. There is always political turbulence, and I don't know if you know that McDonald's, the only country that has failed McDonald's in the world, was Bolivia, because the radical political ideologies and insecure citizens also, and lack of access to rural areas inside the country. So this is important to people who lives in another continents and countries that have learning in this video. It's important to know this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you say that. I mean, because there are, when you're dealing with a region that's got some political difficulties, and you're trying to run a business and recruit people, it's just that extra, it's an additional challenge beyond the normal challenges of running a franchise. I mean, typically, how long do franchisees operate their businesses? Is it, the contracts, sort of 5 or 10 years, or is it shorter term things in your region?
The contract last average is 5 years here in Latin America, and they have to renew it for 5 years
so
more.
Pretty similar here. Yeah, absolutely. And the sort of the demographic of, we've spoken there of the demographic of a franchisee. And we've spoken about the fact that QSR brands work. Is there a sort of a gap in the market in Latin America for a type of business that you think would work really well, that currently isn't been represented in the region?
Well, according to the studies and research in Latin America, there are about 5,600 franchisees, where 60% of these are international brands that comes from another country, and only 40% are local brands. And of the local franchisee, more than 95% of these local brands has not crossed the borders. And the average number of units per brand in Latin America is 40 units. In Peru, the country that I am from, there are only 4 units per brands. So we are 10 times less developed than the average of the region. Beyond seeing it as a disadvantage, it seems an opportunity to grow the sector. No? And
I mean, look,
strengthen.
if I was a QSR brand and I wanted to come into Latin America, and for what you said so far, it makes perfect sense to look at master franchising, because of the intricacies and the cultural differences, etc., etc. What is the availability of master franchise investors like in Latin America? Is it quite healthy? So if somebody was to come in and have the master franchise rights for the whole region, is that a viable way of growing in your marketplace?
I would recommend that the people who lives in another country in another region see Latin America as a whole country, and they can come and land their brands and choose one country as the headquarters, and then expand to the whole Latin America, because we have a same culture, we have the same language, so you can expand the whole Latin America. Beside also Brazil, that they have another language, Portuguese, and also Mexico has the same language.
And what would be the
Spanish.
most franchise-friendly country to do that in if you were to launch? What would you say?
I would say the regulation and the political turbulence.
So where would that lead me to launch? Which country? Peru, Brazil?
What country? I would say Chile. I would choose 3: Chile, Peru, and probably Uruguay.
Okay.
Now.
No, that's really interesting. We've got a question here, and welcome Johnny to the show. Johnny is a franchise auditor, and he's based in Los Angeles. Now he's put, are there any specific cultural impediments to collecting royalties in Latin American regions? Do you have any difficulties at all in collecting your royalty payments, or are people generally in the culture good in terms of paying their royalties and that side of the business?
The average of royalty here comes from 3% to 8% monthly. And yes, there are some problems to collect the royalty, but there's a lot of the franchisee chain, they have their own software, and most of the franchisee, they specify flat franchisee, not percentage. They specify a flat, so they don't have the problem to control indicators.
That's a really interesting point, and I think when you're expanding internationally, having a flat fee like that can work really well, because like you say, you don't have to then think about or monitor those sales. So it's a really important one to think about when you are looking potentially to expand into this region, to consider that as a model rather than royalty. But look, thanks for that question, Johnny. Really appreciate that. Let us know if you've got any other questions. Now, look, we've got a couple of questions here. One for you, Simon. So we're going to go for that one first.
That'll teach me to be on this side of the screen, won't it?
Yeah, that's it. You're not asking, you're answering today. So this is a question for you, Simon, from Jitin. And Jitin's put, Simon, from a talent recruitment perspective in franchising, what is the average time frame from a people retention standpoint? I'm assuming in QSR this is lower compared to other industries.
I mean, look, I can only really talk about this from the franchisor side of things. I mean, I don't recruit staff for franchisees, so restaurant staff, etc. When we're looking at retention periods, I mean, that is an issue. That is an issue within the franchising sector. I would say the average is about 3 years, 3 years in post. That's if you take an example of somebody who's doing a franchise support and development role. And that creates a few problems. What's important to the franchisee is longevity, is basically making sure they've got that, frontline support staff that have experience of walking them, taking them through their franchising life cycle, because that's really how they're going to benefit the business. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a massive red flag, but I mean, look, in my experience, people tend to change quite significantly during their career, and 3 years is about the average, which can create its own problems, which is why a lot of focus is not just put on from a recruitment point of view in terms of recruiting the right individuals that have a very clearly mapped out career path, so they know exactly where they're headed for from day one, but to build in retention strategies as well, because that is vitally important to the stability of the network and the performance of the network as well. It can be very destabilizing if you have frontline boots on the ground people that are changing every 12 months. As I said, you're going back to square one all the time. So we can help by making sure the right people are recruited at the front end, but more needs to be done in certain quarters. And yeah, I would say maybe the QSR sector is a bit more volatile in terms of the number of times people are changing within that sort of franchisor support infrastructure. But yeah, it's recruitment, it's retention, getting the right person on board, but then making sure that they're gonna stay with you for the life cycle of the franchise business.
Thank you. No, that's great. I mean, it's really interesting. You said there about retention strategies. What sort of thing do you mean by that? What sort of things help a business keep those key members of staff?
It's not rocket science. It's about engaging, making sure you're engaging with your employees. It's not about some fandangoed algorithm that you need to get out and, it's about talking to people and communicating with them. And in recruitment, it's about keeping your promises. You'll have a performance review every 6 months and make sure it happens every 6 months so that individual is on the right pathway. You're looking to attract people into a position where they might have to take a bit of a step back from a salary point of view, but the end game is a rapid career progression and promotion through the business. You've got to make sure that you're delivering on that. So it's not rocket science. It's more common sense and listening and engaging with people. Employee engagement is huge, and in franchising that means involving people in key decision making processes as well, and don't isolate individuals, because in terms of franchising, the people that have at the sharp end, those individuals that are actually working with franchisees day in, day out, will give you a vast amount of information and insight into the performance of the network and how things can move on. So really it's just coming down to the right people in the right seats and communicating and engaging with them, and putting a lot of time and effort into retaining that talent and supporting them and developing their career with training. In franchising, we have the QFP, for example. What a brilliant way to recognize people in franchising, by giving them the opportunity to turn their skills and experience into a professional qualification that will help them. So there are good franchisors that continually develop and invest in the progression of their key employees and really help people nurture and develop through their life cycle within the organization.
Absolutely. No, that's a fantastic answer to that question. And Nick's put here, absolutely right. Retention is not rocket science, but it's also surprising how few companies understand what to do. Yeah.
I could give you a list. I'm not going to, but I could give you a list of the top 10 reasons why people come to me and say, Simon, find me a new job. And they're usually because they're not being listened to, and they don't feel valued within an organization. It's not difficult.
No, exactly. Guillermo, I want to hand things over to you. We've got a question here from Jitin for you. But before we move on to that, actually, let's take that question that Simon's just answered and see how that applies to you. So in terms of retaining your people, so I'm talking, we could talk about front end staff within the QSRs, but let's talk for now about, let's say, a franchise development manager, someone who's key to growing that business and looking after those franchisees. What's the sort of timescale for someone like that? How long do they stay in their jobs? Is it a high turnover, or Do people tend to stick about for a number of years?
I would say first something important that is related to recruitment franchising partners that happen here in Latin America, and from the years experience working with many companies, I will say that a mortality rate of a business started only by itself in the market is 20%, 27%, and the mortality rate of a business starting with a franchisee model is only 5%, since they share the risk with the whole chain of partners of the brands. And about the question that you asked, tell me, yes, I would say that it's a high term relationship with this manager, with the whole chains, that they need to promote training with these people and avoid to the people go from the company.
Absolutely. It's really interesting to hear you say that stat, those percentages, that only 5% of the businesses are failing that are part of a franchise business, because that's a stat that I'm glad to hear is consistent, actually, because that's very similar here. We had the wonderful Pip from the BFA on franchising brand stories, who confirmed a very similar figure. So it's wonderful to see that franchising can carry across to a different culture, a different region, but as a entity, franchising adds to the strength and the foundation of any business. So that's really wonderful to hear. Let's have a quick look at another question here for Guillermo from Jitten. Let's have a look. Guillermo, would you say the barrier to entry for a franchisee is much more easier? What do franchisors do to exhibit and advertise their brands to attract? Okay, yeah, that's a good one. So in terms of attracting new business as a franchisor, do you have exhibitions in Latin America? Is that a good way to promote your business, or are there better ways to do it?
Yes, we have many franchising fairs here in Latin America. And the second main is located in Bogota, Colombia. The first one is in Brazil. And then we have small franchisee fairs in different countries, I would say 2 times per year. And you can come with your brand and show all the benefits of your franchisee to different local Latin American investors.
No, it's fantastic. That may be an interesting way for someone to start to promote their brand within some of these regions. Would you say it's a good starting point, or is it better for a more established brand?
No, I would say that probably with the new brands and also to establish, but you have a lot of opportunities here, a lot of exhibitions and a lot of fairs to show your opportunity in investment.
Fantastic. We are starting to come towards the end today. If you have just joined us, this is the Franchise Show, and we are talking franchise recruitment. We are talking franchising in Latin America, and it's been a fascinating conversation. I will be posting links to the replay of this particular episode, but if you're interested in franchising in Latin America and the latest in franchise recruitment, check out this. And I'm going to give these 2 wonderful gentlemen a chance in a moment to talk about what they do and the best way to get in contact. So first of all, Simon, could you let us know a little bit, remind people about your business again and the best way to get in contact with yourself should you want to access your wonderful services?
Yep, they're very welcome to write to me. No, just kidding.
Carrier pigeon, yeah.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I'm a recruiter. My passion is franchising, and put those 2 together, I'm a very effective recruiter for both staff and executives for franchisors. That's what I do, basically. And people can find me on LinkedIn, or they can send me an email at simon@franrec.co.uk.
Fantastic. Wonderful. And the same goes to you, Guillermo. So if somebody is looking to get some advice, bring their business to Latin America, wants to talk to yourself, what's the best way to get in contact with you, and explain a little bit about your current business and services as well?
Yes, yes. You can contact to our website, a franchisee portal named expansionfranquicia.com. And we're gonna be with the door opens to help you to land your brands in Latin America. We help also to migrate business models to the franchising business models, and we also we work as a brokers, and we help to recruit franchisors here in Latin America, and we also manage a business incubator named Proemprender, and we promote the micro franchising business model. I will also mention that we launched a cinematographic entrepreneurship documentary named Day by Day, The Entrepreneurial Way, where we show 5 business company history, where 2 of them has grown successfully applying the franchising business model. We have been showing this in the cinema before the COVID, but now you can find it also in YouTube channel.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for those introductions. What I will do is I'll put a link in the comments today, a link to both your services so that people can click on that should they wish to. So if before we finish off today, if either of you have got any final thoughts on both franchising in Latin America, first of all to you, Guillermo. So if you could give just your final roundup of sort of your current thoughts on franchising in Latin America as a bit of a last message to our audience, that would be great.
Well, I will start to mention again the advantage of starting franchising in Latin America. There's a dynamic entrepreneurial business ecosystem. There's a high food consumption in restaurants, high coffee consumption on the streets, a business growth trend with the franchising models, and Latin American society is always looking for new offer from foreign brands from different countries, different continents. And there are some disadvantages also, lack of legal framework and political turbulence, radical political ideologies and insecure citizens, and lack of access to rural areas inside the countries. And also say that thank you a lot for this invitation and being here to promote this business model that is franchising.
You're very welcome. Same to you, Simon. Any final thoughts before we wrap up in terms of recruitment that you'd like to offer?
I think in terms of recruitment, I think you just think outside of the box and be creative. Know your franchising brand story. Know who you're looking to recruit. Have your ideal profile, your ideal avatar worked out. Don't just immediately go towards the portals without looking at your own website and your own organic recruitment. And be creative, think outside the box, and know who you want, and that will guide you on the right pathway. It isn't rocket science. It's very, very people focused, people centric. Staff recruitment as well as franchisee recruitment. It's all about personalities and finding the right fit, culture, values, as well as those hard skills and experience we've talked about. So
really important. Yeah. Thank you for that final roundup. Well, thank you both to you, Guillermo, and to you, Simon, for your time today. It's been a fascinating conversation, and thank you to everybody who's joined us in the audience today. This show is only what it is because of the wonderful community that supports it. A couple of things before we finish. I'd like to let you know that coming up this Thursday on Franchising Brand Stories, we have the wonderful Andrew Withers from FFS Brands, Southern Fried Chicken, being part of that. Fascinating story behind the brand, and it's going to be really, really good and interesting to find out what that is. So join us Thursday, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST for that. Next week on the Franchise Show, we have a bit of a special one. It's going to be coming live from our wonderful sponsors at Sky. Sky AdSmart sponsoring this show, and we're doing the show live from the Sky studios. So it won't be my Harry Potter-esque under the stairs office. or my London office. You'll be in the Sky Studios. So that's going to be a very exciting one. We're going to be talking with the lovely Kurt Edwards from Sky Ad Smart, and we're going to be talking about franchise TV advertising. So please join us for that next Tuesday, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST. Until then, take good care. Have a wonderful week in franchising, and goodbye.